Someone's stolen the laptop. Oh well, never mind. Right, it's been an interesting couple of years, hasn't it? And it's nice to be back here looking down on a sea of smiling faces again. Okay, so let's do the right policy update. Oh dear, is this right? Oh, right, that's better, isn't it? Okay, so this is where I run through what's happened since the last time I gave the right policy update, which in this case is 2-3 years ago. And it saves you having to go to right meetings and read all those tedious email threads and so forth. So, let's make a start. This is a meta update. This is an update about the right policy development process itself, which is the WONK's, the policy WONK's modus operandi. It describes how policy is actually developed and so forth in the RIPE community. And in the absence of anything else to do, they've updated this policy development process. Now, in actual fact, not a lot has changed, to be perfectly frank. It's mostly in wording and so forth. The process itself is largely the same. And so if you're not excited by these things, I wouldn't bother to look at it. On the other hand, if you do want to look at it, feedback on version 3 closes on the 27th of May, which is tomorrow. So you can sort of read this if you like, rather than going to the social or something. But anyway, it's interesting if that sort of thing turns you on. Okay. Over the last couple of years, we've all been working from home, haven't we? And you would have expected that policy development would have leapt on in leaps and bounds and so forth. This hasn't actually been the case. In the last 2 years, there have been, in 2020, there were 0 policies proposed. In 2021, there were 0 policies proposed. And now that we've actually started to go back into the real world, as it were, there's been 1 policy. And it's nothing to do with addresses, oddly enough. So let's have a look and see what has actually been happening. There's been a lot of talking about policy, but nothing actually very much coming out of it. Talk about address. Ooh, look at that. Oh well. Talk about this says IPv6 stockpiling, but that doesn't seem very likely. I suspect it's IPv4 stockpiling. Sorry? Is it really? Okay, I didn't actually get to the meeting, so right. For some reason, people are stockpiling IPv6, which seems slightly odd, but there we go. There's been talk about temporary assignments. There's been talk about the RIPE database requirements. There's actually been a task force that has gone together and actually decided what the requirements for the RIPE database are. Again, keep people occupied, I suppose. Anyway, on to the policy proposal itself. There is 1 current policy proposal. It's in the initial discussion phase, and it's related to the database working group, which is a bit strange. We don't very often get policy proposals about the database coming out of the database working group. And this is really more of an advisory document. And basically what it says is the RIPE database is an operational database. It's there to help you actually sort out network problems and so forth, and to be able to track down who owns an IP address and AS numbers and so forth. And basically what it says is that although there are a lot of natural person objects within the RIPE database, really what people really need is role objects. Very seldom these days is it actually a real person and only a real person that's looking after a particular address range. Usually it's a role. It's a NOC or a hostmaster or something like that. And therefore, the role of person objects within the database is decreasing. And if you're actually creating a role object or creating a person object in particular, you should think why you're doing it and why you're not actually doing a role object. And having said that, when you've created that role object, you should think about how you need to contact that role object. And like it or not, these days, email is still the predominant way of contacting an address contact. So what you should put in is an email address, and this is the recommended primary contact. If you really, really want to, you can put in telephone numbers and things like that, but ideally it should just be an email address. This whole thing is being driven by GDPR, of course, and the idea that you keep as much personal data out of a publicly available database as possible. So, the recommendation, which is coming out of this policy proposal, is that you create role objects, if at all possible, and that you settle for email address contact as the primary contact mechanism. Also that's coming out of this proposal is that the RIPE NCC, poor sods, are going to have to try and check this contact information on a regular basis, and it doesn't actually say what they should do if it doesn't work, but there we go. These contacts should be checked. It's obviously easier to check an email address than it is to check a telephone number, so the takeaway is role objects if possible, email addresses as contacts, and if at all possible, take your person objects, your natural person objects, out of the database, because they are visible for everybody to see, and it causes all sorts of GDPR problems. And that's it. Nothing else for the last 3 years. Any questions?
Any questions indeed for Nigel? Okay, right. Thank you very much indeed.